Hi, and welcome to Studio 411. I'm your host, Larry Dasilva. As always, we love when musicians stop by to pay us a visit here on the Studio 411 set. We've got a gentleman that, if you don't know, well, you certainly will remember him after you hear him join us today, both speaking with us and playing some tunes from his most recent CD called Tuesday, as well as his newest CD called The Powers That Be. This gentleman has been around for a few years. You might remember him as one of the members of the Joe Perry Project back in the 80s, as well as the rock band Fahrenheit. Well, he's been performing solo, a singer, songwriter, musician for the last 25 or so years, with a little bit of a twist in between, and he'll share that with us when we get to sit down with our guest. And performing right now a new song. Let's give it up for Charlie Farren.
Lay down the law. We've got the power. You know, I believe that we can change this world. It sounds so simple, but I swear to God, I believe it's true. Believe that nothing can go wrong. We are infinite, invincible, and strong. And we are here, and it's now, and we've got this. Yeah, and we've had it all along. We are the powers that be. Yeah, yeah. We've got the muscle. We are the authority. Never bow down. Lay down the law. Lay down the law. Sometimes you gotta fight to be free. I'm not talking violence. Nah, the war we've got to win is in our hearts. The secret is that we've already won. Every moment, a new moment's begun. And every thought and idea is a miracle. Yeah, and the currency is fun. We are the powers that be. Yeah, yeah. We've got the muscle, we are the authority, never bow down. So surprising, no disguising, new world rising. We are the powers that be, yeah, yeah. Muscle. We are the authority, never bow down. Never bow down. No, never bow down. Lay down the law.
There you go. That's what we're talking about. All right, Charlie Farren joining us here for the hour on Studio 411. Charlie, come on, make your way over here. And the new CD coming out shortly, The Powers That Be. And let me guess, it sounds like a title track. Am I correct on that?
Well, the song is The Powers That Be. The record is going to be called Charlie Farren, guitar and voice.
Oh, okay. All right.
And there's a single guitar and a single voice. Makes up all the music on the record.
Keep those production costs down.
Well, it's really about highlighting my guitar style. Typically, I'll write songs like this on the guitar, and then I'll bring it into the band, and we'll take it all apart and we'll change the arrangements. So I decided this time I was going to do a record like I write the song.
Right.
And I think it's coming out great. You know, I'm really excited about
Well,
it.
when I saw you perform solo some time back, again, exactly the way we're hearing it, you know, here today, is that you do your thing like when you were with Fahrenheit, and you still get together with the guys once in a while, where again that's more orchestra drum driven, and then this is again kind of acoustic / electric acoustic that you do. So it's a good sound.
It's song driven and it's meaning driven.
Yeah.
You know, and it shines a spotlight on my guitar style, which is which is unusual. My guitar style is definitely unusual.
We were talking in the green room before we started the broadcast today. The song itself, I said, I bet you this has something to do with what we were talking about. Tell me about how, or tell the audience how, you know, every morning you get out, you put the headsets on, you go out, you look at the sky and say, hey, what a great new day, and then you kind of tell me about some of the things that you're experiencing while you're walking around, and what kind of, in my mind, led to this song, The Powers That Be.
The powers that be. Well, you know, I try to walk every day. I have a route that's about 5 miles. And, you know, and I listen to music. I listen to the music I'm working on.
Yeah.
I listen to comedians, you know. And I also listen to lectures on science, on esoterica, you know. And listening and learning, you know. So now I have the time to do that, and I enjoy it. And a lot of times it informs what I write about, you know.
Tell me, you were talking about unique guitar stylings. Who were some of your influences growing up, and did they influence you in terms of getting into the business, or also your guitar and vocal stylings as well?
Well, you know, when I first started, I played guitar, but the first professional band I was in, I didn't play guitar. I was a frontman, lead singer. But I started writing my own music and wanted to play my own music. And that's when I started playing guitar in the band. You know, I played guitar, but I didn't play guitar in the band, the first professional band I was in. But then as I started to write, I wanted to play the guitar in the band. And I developed a style that's kind of unusual. It's 10 fingers, you know, I never made a record like that, though. I got signed. After I was in the Joe Perry project, I got signed by Ahmet Ertegun to Atlantic Records. And he wanted me to really work on my songwriting, but he wanted to show that guitar style. He liked that style. So this record is really something that I've, a new approach to making a record for me. It's not a folk record, it's a rock record, but it's just one guitar, nylon string guitar, and a voice. You know.
Now you talked about, again, for those who may not know, Ahmet Ertegun, again, one of the founders of Atlantic Records back in, my late 40s, early 50s. And again, a guy that, from talking to you previously, again, a mentor for you. Share kind of your first encounter with Ahmet, who passed away a few years back.
Ahmet passed away. So Ahmet was the founder of Atlantic Records, and he heard a tape that my band sent in. And he was interested. I sent them, then I followed through with some demos that I was working on. And the demos were me playing my nylon string guitar into my tape recorder. And he heard that and said, all right, I'm gonna work with this artist. And he had me come in and said, we can't make the record because this kind of music isn't popular right now.
Right.
This would have been in '83. Okay, after the Joe Perry project. He said, so just write, and I'll work with you. And he'd call me on the phone, he'd talk about the songs. He'd criticize the songs he didn't like, too.
Sure.
It's like Moon and June. So
tough love.
Yeah, well, it was, you know, the Moon and June and I Love You and, you know, all this stuff. He goes, that's not good songwriting, you know, work on it more, you know. So he was a really good mentor. When he liked something, it really meant something. And he liked several of the songs so much that he offered me a deal like right away. And I worked with him for about 1.5 years, and I started to also work with David Hull, who was the bass player in the Joe Perry project. And we started writing together, and playing, and we found a drummer that we liked, and you know, we played several gigs. I was doing playing in a band called the New England All-Star Jam Band, and it was with Franny Sheehan from Boston, Barry Goodrow from Boston, Roger Earl from Foghat.
Oh yeah.
John Butcher was in that group. James Montgomery.
It was like an all-star band.
It was like an
now.
all-star band.
When's the last time those guys all got together? Like that's a great band.
Yeah, we had Steely Dan. What's his name now?
Oh, Jeff Baxter.
Jeff Baxter
There
was
you
in
go.
the band.
I was just talking about him with somebody today. Him and his the mutton chops that he had. Yeah.
And so it was a big band. We had the Uptown Horns who toured with the Rolling Stones, and we would go around and play just covers. And Fahrenheit opened for that band at the Channel when we played in Boston, and Foghat's manager was there, and saw us and said, "I want to sign you guys." So we got a deal really quickly before we did a lot of recording.
Now that was for another label. I'm just,
For Warner Brothers.
What was Amit's feeling on that? Obviously, he'd be happy for you, but was he like, "You're going in a different direction, maybe than I thought," or did he just not say much?
So I had been working for a year and a half with him, and he wasn't ready to make the record.
Right.
And now Warner Brothers, who at the time was kind of a sister company to Atlantic, now the Russ Thyrett, who was in charge of promotion, wanted to sign us to Warner Brothers. And so Amit said, "Go ahead, go do it. That's cool."
Sure.
So that was fantastic, and it was great working with him. I learned a lot. I learned how to question myself, and I became a much better writer working with Amit.
There you go. Charlie Farren joining us for the hour here on Studio 411. For more information, charliefarren.com, and also F-Man Media on Facebook and Twitter at Charlie Farren. So you got, as with everyone we have on, a multitude of ways to reach out and find out what's going on, and certainly in your world and your career. Go back to some of the you were talking about when you were writing. Ever revisit some of those old tracks, The Moon in Blue and whatever, and say, geez, I could rework that, or boy, look back and say, man, I can't believe I was writing that kind of stuff,
Well, I really don't consider the songs permanently written. I still fool around with them.
Mm-hmm.
I'm still writing all of them, let's
Sure.
put it that way. My set is diverse, and I do some of the rock songs because it's me singing. I still sing like a rock singer.
Yeah.
And people still ask for them, and I do them. And a lot of times I'll go and do play with bands. I like to play. So I had this thing I call them drive-by sit-ins, and I will offer to play with a band, And so what they do is they do a set, and then they give me 30 minutes to play solo. And then I'll sit in with them
Sure.
for a couple of Joe Perry Project songs.
Nice.
I put a thing up on Facebook, a little clip saying I want to do these things, so get in touch with me. And I got 90 responses, and every month or so I do one.
There you go.
Yeah, it's fun.
That's again, like comedians have that same kind of thing. They'll show up almost unannounced, or maybe the club manager, knows, hey, they might pop in, and musicians as well. They just want to keep perfecting, keep honing the craft.
Especially new material.
Yeah.
You want to really get headroom with it before you record it.
Growing up as a kid, now you grew up in Massachusetts, correct?
In Malden,
So
yeah.
Lifelong Massachusetts boy, yeah.
Yes.
So again, I was talking to some folks not too long ago about some of the great bands and musicians, but primarily bands. I mean, people like Aerosmith, Jay Giles, if I'm not mistaken, Boston, of course. I mean, growing up, who were some of the bands that you listened to, that were made it big, perhaps in the New England area?
Well,
Besides those, 3 or 4 that we mentioned.
So everybody, I feel like I know all of those guys.
Yeah.
We get together. There's a group that gets together and plays, jam band kind of evenings, and it's fun. It's fun, Extreme is a fantastic band. I opened for them a string of shows a couple of summers ago. They're just terrific.
Yeah, that's the gentleman that they had a couple of hits back in, I want to say, the 90s, and then I'm blanking on his name, but he wound up being selected to be Sammy Hagar's replacement on Van Halen, if I'm not
Gary
mistaken.
Sharon.
There you go, yeah, Gary
And
Sharon.
Gary is a friend. And Nuno Betancourt also tours with, he toured with Eminem as a guest. And I'm trying to think of the singer's name. Big, famous, I can't think of her name
Yeah,
right now. But they're just a really excellent band. I opened for a lot of groups as a solo. You know, I'm trying to think.
Oh, when I saw you opened up for our friends John Cafferty and the Beaver Brown Band.
Beaver
I guess,
Brown,
you know, the guys Rhode
Eddie
Island,
Money.
but still, you know, Eddie Money again.
Leonard Skinner, Styx, you know, I won't be able to think, but just dozens and dozens of bands, and they have me as an acoustic solo opener. And Extreme is really among the very best. You know, you see them up close, you can really get a good read on how good they are.
Now, in the 80s, the career is going well, and then you reach a plateau of sorts, and again, I just find it to be a fascinating story where then, and I'll let you take it from here, you kind of put the brakes on full-time duty, and did what, why, and tell us the story.
Well, so my wife and I were trying to have a baby, and we were touring, and we were doing well, but there was a shift in the music business in 1989, and I remember thinking, you know, you go on tour, and the label gives you, they let you go and just pick cassettes and take them, and you're driving a lot, and you're listening to tapes a lot, and you get to hear everybody, right? And the temperature changed, the music shifted in 1989, and the kind of music that we were doing wasn't what was hip anymore. You know, Faith No More came out, Rage Against the Machine came out, and I remember looking at my partner, David Hull, and just listening to this stuff, thinking like, if I'm a kid, I'm going to be listening to this stuff.
Right.
This is the new thing that's coming out. So the decade was closing, and new bands were coming out, and they didn't sound like we did. We were the old style.
And would you say that was more of a metal sound, because that would have been pre-grunge, you know, pre-like Nirvana, although that was brewing on the
that was brewing
Northwest,
too.
yeah.
That was brewing too, and labels were looking for the new thing. They weren't
Yeah.
looking for more. You know, we were an '80s band.
Yeah.
Now we're a fantastic band, and we still play together, and we sound great. But the times were shifting. My wife, you know, was expecting, and we had lost the use of our name Fahrenheit through another band copyrighted, and we couldn't use that, so we had to make another first record. It just felt like, okay, you know, let's not fight this. It's time to make a shift. Now, I continued to play. I started focusing on performance solo, and I continued to make records, but I started to work. I went to work at Digital Equipment Corporation. And I had a little tiny job, and I was filing for a group that wrote catalog entries. And then I got a job as a catalog entry writer. And then I got a job, and I kept finding new jobs. And then I finally
all within the same company, or
within the
changing?
same company.
Yeah, gotcha.
And then I'd say, what are those guys doing? They have expense accounts. They look like they have, you know, they're making a lot of money. So I got that job managing a portfolio of partners. Compaq bought us, and the partners I was managing for Digital were all Windows partners, and most of the people at Digital thought Windows is a toy. Windows is never going to catch on. So when I went to Compaq is a Windows company, and all my partners were interesting to them, important to them, and I started spending half my time in Houston, which is where they're located. Had some successes. But when Hewlett-Packard bought us, I was managing the Windows management partners, and they had Windows management applications. So suddenly my partners weren't that valuable anymore. And then I started managing Red Hat, Linux, and built that into with the help of my colleagues, built it into a really, really excellent, healthy business. And I did really well there. and I well enough to retire 5 years ago.
There
Get
you go.
just back
Very
into
good.
music.
So literally about a 20 plus, almost 25-year kind of side career, even though you did keep your feet wet and like with your own studio
Yeah.
at home. And
I kept making records.
Yeah.
I kept writing, and I'd do 2 or 3 shows a year as a solo, and became good at being a solo performer. So when I left HP, I just thought this is my chance to open my eyes again and get down to writing and making records again.
so in your mind, let's say year 10, 15, 20, you kind of, okay, I'm kind of doing some things on the side, kind of, but not really fully visualizing, otherwise you'd be like a soothsayer. Oh, that when I get to year 20, 20 something, I'm going to really dive head first. You never kind of envision that, or just kind of thought, oh, I'll play around with it a little bit and see what, never know what could happen.
No, I thought now I'm gonna focus on this and be successful doing this again.
Yeah.
I thought my early career was successful, and when I came back into it after leaving HP, it was very different. The record labels were very different. The recording equipment was different. The kind of formula that you used to use to make a record and go out on tour, that was all different. So I'm still in the learning curve, but I think my music, I feel, is as good, if not better than ever. And I really love the whole notion that I'm going to be making and finally making this record that I was going to make with Ahmed on Atlantic. And it's really a challenge because you play it and you sing it, and then you listen back to it, and you have to make sure that it has energy and it feels, there are no drums on it, it's just the guitar and the voice.
Wow.
But I'm really happy with the way it's coming out, and I feel like I'm in a good phase of my career.
There you go. Charlie Farren joining us for the hour here on Studio 411. For more information, charliefarren.com. And you actually, again, he's psychic and he doesn't even know it. He took my next question. What does it take to become successful today versus 25 years ago or even 30 years ago? As you said, I remember when I was in radio, I mean, we used to, you edit on an editing block, Razor,
Yeah.
We talked off air about, reel to reel, digital, not digital, it was pre-digital, but, tape equipment and you mentioned earlier cassettes. I mean, it's a whole new ball of wax. Yeah.
It really is, and there are things that are enabled by this technology, and then there are challenges. Most people now feel like music is free, and the amount of people that buy records or buy CDs is way, way, way down for everybody. Mm-hmm. Even the big acts. So you have to figure out you have to monetize different things. The revenue isn't in this. The record sales really is like it was in the '80s, but you have to relearn how to do it, and everybody does.
Yeah.
The upside is that computers make the music ubiquitous, so it's hard to sell it because it's free everywhere, right? But there are other ways. There are other ways to do it, and live performance always was one of my favorite things.
Would you say back then, and again, we were around, but certainly I wasn't in the business, and you weren't in the music business. But back in the day, maybe touring was kind of like, well, do a little bit. It was more like maybe radio and TV, and of course whatever singles came out. Now it seems like you're saying, it's you put the disc out or the MP3, whatever methods are used. And all of a sudden, okay, hit the road, or in your case, kind of do it locally, and I guess also use social media to really, perk things up. I mean,
Yeah,
that's your PR people now is social media.
Yes, and you have to be good at that.
Yeah.
And you have to work it all the time. And I know a lot of musicians I know, not the younger ones, but the ones in my kind of age group.
Yeah.
They don't know how to do it.
I know someone, I'm not going to say who it was, but up until a couple of years ago, it wasn't even on their radar, or they were so resistant to it, whether it was because you know, it takes too much time, or probably fear of not knowing what they're doing. And again, you're learning something new every day.
Yeah, you have to, and a lot of people are good at that. And I just forced myself to, you know, maintain my own website. I built my own website, and it's not hard to do. But I think people, musicians, who aren't, I guess, good at learning new things.
Right.
Right. They get a mindset that, boy, that's just, you know. So I know a lot of fantastic musicians that if they have a website, they don't maintain it themselves.
Yeah.
And they don't, and you really have to. You have to. It only takes a few minutes to do, but they're intimidated. It's just new, you know.
Yeah, that, or as I said, I think sometimes they just, oh, you know, I don't have time for that. I got too much going on. But you disprove that because, you know, you're writing, you're gigging, you're constantly, you know, in control of what, and you have to, because look how many acts. I mean, I'm going back to the old days where, you know, people, oh, what do you mean I don't have to buy rights to my songs? Or what do you mean I'm not getting royalties? I mean, they just took everything for granted. Oh, we'll let the accountant, we'll let the manager, we'll let this, and the next thing you know, oh, well, where did they go?
You really have to apply yourself and know all of this, in my view, and you have to be a good musician. You know, you have to be a writer. You have to play your instrument, but you have to be good at this other stuff too. You know.
Best advice you ever got from a career standpoint, even outside of music, but you know, that you say, wow, you know, this is like, you know, really I look back and say, you know, they really hit the nail on the head. Anything come to mind?
Well, we were talking earlier about Ahmet Ertegun, and you know, he used to challenge me if he heard a lyric that he thought was lazy, if he thought a song was you know, he said to me one time, I had a song called "Make Me Stay," and I thought it was fantastic. I really liked it. But he listened to it. He says, I see what you're doing. That's good. If I want to listen to Ray Charles, I'm going to put on Ray Charles. I'm not going to listen to this. You know, you make your own sound. You know, don't emulate other people. And I really, you know, when he said that, it stung. But at the same time, I thought, of course, you're right.
Yeah.
If I want to listen to a Ray Charles thing, I'm going to put on Ray Charles.
And he should know, because Ray was first on Atlantic back in the day.
He signed him. So,
so
I thought, you know, this is hard advice, but this is good advice coming from somebody who knows. You know.
Let's see. We'll cajole Charlie into doing another number. What are you going to play for us next?
I'm going to play a song that this song kind of convinced me to do this new record this way. It's a song called "Hold Me Down and Love Me." Right now, and it's on my Tuesday record.
Okay.
And on that record, it has a bass, keyboards, and it's a swingy thing, and it's really, really cool. And I like it. But when I started performing it solo, without the band, I found a new way to do it, and it's better than the record.
There you go.
And so I thought, this is how I'm going to make my next record.
Before we jump to that, I just want to go to this shot, if the guys in the control room can pull this up. This was a shot that I had to include. The gentleman for the viewer, that's Sam Kinison. I assume that's at some charity or softball game.
It was a softball game.
And then if you look to the left, the very tall gentleman above Sam's scarf, there's Charlie. Some other notables, the late Brad Delp. We'll talk about him a little later on the right with the beard and the Jeff Lynne haircut. And I think there was some other people there from
Mark
also
Perreno.
Boston. Yeah.
Mark Perreno from WBCN has the megaphone.
Yeah.
Fran Sheen from
On
Boston.
The bottom left, yeah.
Sebhastian, the drummer in Boston.
So.
And then kneeling down in front with the white hat is Randy Hansen, the guy who did the Jimi Hendrix stuff.
Oh, okay.
And Pauly Shore with the sunglasses.
Oh, is that down? He's genuflecting for Sam. I can see there.
He's just Johnny A is in that picture. Nice. I should have had my glasses on.
There's another all-star band. We get Pauly and Sam opening up for these guys. Although I don't know, Sam might have said, "Look, you're going to open for me." So anyway. Quite a collection, but great shot.
Bobby Sutton, who was my drummer.
Great shot.
That was a fun day. I remember that. And WBCN brought in ringers.
Yeah.
They brought in semi-pro, minor league, big leaguers, you know. And so they, you know, and they can hit a ball.
And did Sam play or?
Sam played.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And what are your recollections about him? I mean, have you met him more than once? Or
Oh
just
yeah.
that one
No,
time?
many times.
Yeah.
And he was a riot. He was just on.
Yeah.
You know, he was the way he is on TV.
But that's what I found the limited thing where I've interviewed or spent some time with comedians is that they just, even in their presence, like I was telling you earlier, we did a show with a female comedian, and we've got some others coming up in the future, and all of a sudden, I tell you, I went home, and as I'm driving, I'm juiced, and it's just from like being, doing an interview,
Yeah.
and it's something about it, and I can understand where it's hard to then decompress. Maybe musicians are like that too, but with comics, oh my goodness, they just fire themselves up, and I just felt that, and I wasn't even telling jokes. I was
Yeah.
just interviewing.
I do a TV show called Community Auditions.
Yeah, I was going to
Right.
ask you about it, the Boston area.
And
yeah.
who was I going to say? Sam Kinison. I mean, now I can't think of his name, and he's a really good friend. He's on the show with us.
Oh, good.
And Lenny Clark, and I know these guys. They're
Lenny
funny.
Clark, he was on that show with the fireman show. Dennis Leary. He was on. Lenny Clark was on there.
Right,
Yeah,
right. So yeah, comics are a riot. I think they're funny, and I know several of them really well.
Yeah, no, good people. Anyway, I wanted to get that in, but now while Charlie gets set up, we're going to throw it back to him. And Charlie, if you would take your spot and do another song.
You
for
bet.
us, and we will kick it over to Charlie Farren joining us here on Studio 411. And what's the next track you're doing again?
Hold Me Down and Love Me.
There you go, Charlie Farren, everybody.
All I offer is all I have is yours. And all I need from you, dear, is to open up the door. You gotta hold me. You gotta love me. You gotta hold me down, love me. You gotta hold me. You gotta hold me, baby, and love me. You gotta hold me down and love me. Don't make no quick decision. Just sleep on it a while. I just wanna make you happy. I just wanna make you smile. And you gotta hold me. You gotta love me. You gotta hold me down. Love me. You gotta hold me. Come on. You gotta love me. You gotta hold me down and love me. Yeah, love me. Let me show you how to do it, baby. Na, 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 na. Yeah, you gotta hold me. You gotta love me. You gotta hold me down and love me. You gotta hold me. You gotta love me. You gotta hold me down and love me. Yeah, love me. Hold
Charlie Farren, oh, he loves his own playing. I gotta love that. That's great. Come on back over, Charlie. All right. Charlie Farren lighting it up for us here on Studio 411 and charliefarren.com for more information, as well as F-Man Media on Facebook and Twitter at Charlie Farren. Oh, okay. You said that was from the Tuesday CD. The Tuesday CD, we'll get into that title track. That song was a song, tell us about it, was from one of your friends who unfortunately left us a few years ago. Tell us a story about how that song came into your possession.
Well, Brad Delp, who was the singer in Boston, was a good friend of mine. And I was doing a radio show one day with him. And after the show was over, he said, come out to the car, I want to play us something. And so he had this rough mix of a recording of a song that he was going to call Tuesday. Working title was Tuesday. But he just kept saying, I can't get a chorus for this. I'm trying to write a chorus for it. He just had 4 verses. And I thought it was pretty, and I remembered it. And I'm thinking, so he never finished the song. And then years later, I called, I thought, I heard it, a demo of it, and I just thought to myself, I could rework this, and instead of it being a chorus song, it'll be one of this, like a Yesterday doesn't have a chorus.
Right.
And it kind of reminded me of Yesterday. So I took the 3rd verse, I called his wife up, and I said, I have an idea for that song, Tuesday. Brad never finished it. Would you be all right with me working on that? So she said, no, that would be great, and sent me a copy of the demo. And I just reworked the third verse into kind of a bridge. And I really liked the way it came out. So I recorded that and named the record Tuesday. And it's a really pretty song that Brad wrote. And I kind of arranged it to make it be complete. Mm-hmm. The irony with that, and I call that the CD Tuesday, and the irony with that is that the telling of that, particularly when it's not my full show when I'm opening, and I do a lot of opening slots for big bands, it's hard to include that song because it's so sad.
Yeah, I don't think I heard it when I saw you, but I remember you talking about it, and I read about it, and I said, oh, this is a great, like backstory about, again, a musician, because it's funny, on the way down here to the studio, what do I hear? I hear, Boston, and of course here, as well as throughout the rest of the country, Boston, you hear their songs. A day doesn't go by you don't hear a Boston song. Right. And of course, what a tribute. And did you know, again, as we tape, this will change, watch next month, but Boston is not in the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame, and that's the gentleman that was playing the record all of a sudden said, oh, it's like a travesty. And I said, yeah, I mean, really. I mean, the amount of records just off that one album, forget the rest of the catalog, that's just amazing.
Yeah, that's crazy, because we toured with Boston in 1987 into 88. We did 95 nights with them, and every single night was sold out. Every single night was sold out. They're great guys, and to think that they're not in the Hall of Fame is crazy. That's crazy.
Yeah. Because
their show is just all hits, and they were fantastic live, and they were fantastic to us. That doesn't make sense to me.
That's a hell of a combination. Fahrenheit and opening, I assume, most nights, if not the whole tour. For
the whole
Boston.
tour, we did the whole tour.
That's amazing.
Yeah, and the highlight, I think, of that was we played at the Cotton Bowl. It was 85,000 people.
Oh, wow.
And that was along with Whitesnake, Aerosmith, Tesla, Poison. It was like one of all-day music.
And it's amazing, out of all those bands, I mean, Boston, again, had personnel changes, so some of that played into the part, but out of all those bands, many of which have reformed as the years went on, Aerosmith was the one constant, and even they had gotten back together, because as you well know, because you worked with them, Joe Perry kind of took a couple of years off when I was in college. I remember getting the Joe Perry project. Of course, little did I know that I'd be meeting Charlie Farren, but I was like, well, holy cow, look at this. This is great, And then here it is now, you guys, you know, or your career again continues to grow. And I just think it's amazing because you made the comment earlier as the 90s came about, really Aerosmith of that whole pack was the one kind of like constant survivor. I mean,
They were, and they changed. They were always a gritty rock band, and in the 80s and into the 90s, they became big, doing big thematic.
yeah, they kind of kicked it up a notch.
They
You know,
kicked it
everything
up.
became, there was one track, and I can't think of the name of it, that almost, you know, it was like, to me, was like their Sgt. Pepper's Lonely Hearts Club Band. I mean, the, you know, the music at the end just, I was like, wow, where are they getting this, or who's producing? I
Yeah.
assumed it was Jack Douglas, but I didn't know for sure.
Yeah, it was not Jack Nicholson.
No, okay.
No, they, you know, I Don't Want to Miss a Thing.
Yeah.
Now I'm not going to be able to think, but they had a lot of these big thematic, you know, super big hit records, and a lot of people who are Aerosmith fans said that's not rock and roll, you know. But they're fantastic live. My bass player David Hull, he was the bass player in Fahrenheit. We're really good friends, and when Tom Hamilton, Aerosmith's bass player, got sick a couple of times, they pulled David out to tour with them, and I went to see him a couple of times on 2 different tours, and they're just fantastic. You know, I mean, they're really good, and they play all hits, and
Oh,
you know,
it's one
iconic.
show doesn't allow for, you know, I just heard even like to talk about lengths of shows that Springsteen just, as we tape, just set a record in this country. He did a show last night that was 3 hours and 52 minutes. His long was in Sweden or Finland, 4 hours and 6 minutes. I mean,
Bruce?
Yeah.
Well,
I mean,
he's known for playing
you know,
crazy long.
I mean, he just, and the set list, like I'm sure with Aerosmith, but with Bruce, he expects you to know all 450 songs.
Yeah.
I mean, you know, I heard Nils Lofgren talking about it, and I just say, you know, Bruce gives a nod of the head or a wink, and everybody seems to know. I mean, it's the epitome of like, it's like karma. I don't
Yeah.
even know how to explain it.
I've done some shows with Bruce Hornsby. Do you know Bruce?
Yes,
Yeah.
absolutely. The Range, and he's he did a lot of work with the Grateful Dead back in the day. And, yeah.
He comes out on his piano. You know, he takes the stage, he sits down at the piano, he just starts playing. And then one by one, the musicians go up on stage and just start jamming. And they go from stream of consciousness, from one song to the other, back to the bridge in the first song. And they don't stop. They play all the way through, and they wing it. And they're playing their own material, but it's all kind of organic. It's not set list based. It's just they play.
Yeah.
I never saw anything like that before. I thought that was great.
But you know, it happens more so again on a one-track level. I remember one time Dean Cassell was the bass player in John Cafferty's band. They were at a benefit in New Haven that I went to, and Joe Bouchard came up on stage, and they broke out into a song. And then I went up and I said, this was great. And I said to Dean afterwards when we were just chatting, I said, when did you guys rehearse? He goes, rehearsed. You know?
Yeah.
It's just, you know, it just comes natural. You know, it's amazing.
Yeah.
Before I forget, tell me a little bit about you started designing your own guitars, I see.
You know, there's a funny story there. So I have that guitar. I have 2 of those, and I have 2 teardrops that Joe Perry's Guitar Tech built for me. And I'm still in touch with him, Neil Thompson. So it's funny. I was working at Digital Compact HP. And by the time I was in HP, you know, I had a prosperous look. You know, you put on weight, you're doing business meetings, you're traveling. And I had put on weight. I looked like a businessman. I didn't look like a rock. So I wanted to get a bigger guitar. And I designed that and built one. And then Dean Campbell, who owns Campbell American Guitars, saw it and said, I want to build these. And so he built one, really nice one. And so I still have those. I went back to playing the teardrops, though, now, the teardrop shape.
Yeah. Oh, I think you had that when I saw it at the cabin in Mass. Yeah. I was like looking at that saying, oh, that's a unique guitar. Again, you know, none of them I ever see are like, Rick Nielsen from Cheap Trick. I mean, he's the most like, unique stuff. I swear he must have stuff that's designed, because he comes up with the weirdest looking guitars.
Yeah,
I mean,
yeah.
but again, that's his style. But I thought that was good.
I thought the teardrops. So Vox used to make a teardrop guitar. Vox is a guitar brand, amplifier. They make good amplifiers, but the guitars they made were not very good. They weren't high quality guitars. So I asked, we were talking about how cool they were, and the problem was, yeah, but they're not that good. And so Neil said, I could make them. I could make it for you. So he made me two. And about maybe 4 or 5 years ago, I reconnected with him on Facebook. And he asked me how the teardrops were. And I said, they're kind of all torn out, really run down. So he said, send them down to me and I'll refurbish them. And he did, and they're beautiful now.
Now, I've never asked this, and we've seen guitars sometimes we go, wow, those, they look like they've been a little shop worn. A good guitar, I mean, whatever, a $5,000 guitar or whatever the price is. I know they run like much more than that. How long can you get good use out of a guitar? Or does it vary on if it's a Rickenbacker or, Les Paul? Or, I mean, obviously there's got to be some.
A good guitar will last a long time if you take care of it.
Yeah.
A lot of the guitars that look really worn, they just have the finishes worn off them, and that's a look that manufacturers emulate, and they sell you new guitars that look worn.
You start to look like Lucille B.B. King, may he rest in peace, or Willie Nelson, where it looks like Willie's like started to carve things into his into the bridge.
He has a hole. He has a hole right through the top. But when you're touring with the guitar, they take wear and tear. A lot of times you don't have a top person as your guitar tech. Sometimes they get put away without getting wiped down. Touring with an instrument is really hard. It's hard on the instrument. And so a lot of times the touring instruments don't last long. My guitars had fallen into disrepair, and but he refurbished them and did a fantastic job. So if you really take care of it, it'll last forever.
There you go. Charlie Farren joining us here on Studio 411 for a few more moments. CharlieFarren.com for more information. You've mentioned so many people. I mean, I feel like there's a couple of all-star bands I've already been exposed to just from talking with you.
Well, when you do this a long time, you do get to know lots of people.
Yeah.
And I forgot to mention Elliot Easton and
from the
keyboard
Cars.
player, from the Cars.
Yeah.
They were on the tour.
Yeah.
That all-star jam band tour.
Yeah.
A lot of fun. Jay Giles, Magic Dick. I'm forgetting names still.
Yeah.
Gary Hoey.
Yeah.
Who
are some of your favorite people to duet or work with, or even some maybe that you would like to, you've met but you've never worked with?
I did a project with John Butcher, who I had known for 40 years. We did a record called FBI, Farren Butcher Inc., Incorporated. Johnny A., who's a fantastic guitar player from around here. He's a really good friend. I think it would be fun to make another record with Joe Perry. One day that would be good. That would be fun.
Yeah.
With David Hull, get the guys back together.
You heard it here first. I was telling you off air, we had Dennis Dunaway here, and it wasn't a week after he was here, all of a sudden I see on his webpage, and I sent him a reply. All of a sudden, Alice Cooper Group's getting back together again. And I was just like, I felt that there was something about it when I was talking with him, because he had written a book that's doing a bang-up business, that I said, something is going to happen here. And sure enough, it wasn't a week after he did the show that all of a sudden, the band, now he's writing feverishly.
I heard that the original Alice Cooper Group was getting back together.
Yeah.
I know that Alice is singing with Joe.
Yeah.
And with the Hollywood Vampires.
Yes,
Johnny
yes.
Depp.
Yeah, yeah.
And but I had heard that about Alice. We toured with Alice when I was with Joe. Joe's always been a fan of Alice.
Yeah. Well, we certainly look forward. Definitely, I can see a Joe Perry Project reunion. You heard it here first, so that's great. That'd be good stuff. Let's see. I get everything straight. CharlieFarren.com for more information. F-Man Media on Facebook and Twitter at Charlie Farren. The most recent CD Tuesday. Look for that, and of course the great tune that Brad Delp from Boston wrote and Charlie has interpreted, and the new CD coming out in the future. Charlie Farren, guitar and vocals, correct?
Guitar and voice.
And voice.
Yes.
Okay. Okay. Well, I was close. It was it was the V word. So
It was originally guitar and vocals.
Oh,
but
okay.
My wife said, something voice.
right,
says
because it's
more.
only one voice. So yeah,
Yeah,
you don't need the
voice.
plural. There you
Plus,
go.
voice means more.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm excited about this record, and I'm hoping to tour behind it as a solo.
There you go. Well, we look forward to seeing you again, and we look forward to having you back on. I appreciate you coming by and playing some numbers for us
Fun
and
stuff.
good stuff. We thank you for joining us here on this edition of Studio 411, and we look forward to seeing you again next time. And have a great week. We'll listen to a track from Charlie's CD work and enjoy, and we'll talk to you next time. Take care.
I'm tired of loving and losing. Sometimes I feel so cold, I get chilled right through to my bones. Can't seem to get this romance grooving. It's easy to fold when you try to face this crazy road alone. 'Cause you got my number, so why don't you give me a call? I ain't got nobody, no. And when you got no one at all, it's just impossible. It's impossible. It's an impossible word. When you're lonely and you need somebody, I'll be around with my Chevy on. Love never learns. Love always burns. Yes, and burns, baby, always leave a scar. Oh. You've got my number, so why don't you give me a call? I ain't got nobody, no. When you got no one at all, it's just impossible. It's impossible. It's an impossible world. Whoa. Impossible world. An impossible world. Da 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 it's just impossible. It's impossible. It's an impossible world. So baby, what you doing later? Do you believe I've got this evening free? I think that nothing would be greater if you could spend just a little time with me. You've got my number, so why don't you give me a call? I ain't got nobody, I know. And when you got no one at all, it's just impossible. It's impossible. It's an impossible world.